Welcome to Shorty's SuperCoach and welcome to the Richmond preview. Going to take a look at the lock, the risk, the breakout, and the no chance for my side of the reigning premiers in a second. But just a quick little shout out to Sam, who said g'day to me at work. I was just floating around and he caught me off guard. Actually, I didn't expect him to recognise me in the old work attire. But yeah, thanks very much, mate. And I always appreciate when people sort of come up and say g'day. It sort of helps to realise that. Because sometimes you just see the views and it's, a certain number and you're like, oh yeah, but when you actually meet a few people that watch it and really seem to care, that certainly makes doing these vids and the motivation, much, much better. So thanks for that, mate. But in terms of the lock for Richmond, it's pretty straightforward. The Tigers sometimes are difficult to pick for, and even though they've been such a good team, they're so even and consistent sort of team, they don't have a stack of out-and-out stars. Haven't always had a lot of Tigers, but Dustin Martin, given the forward eligibility, clearly he's a guy that we've got to get into our sides. 543k, so he's not even super pricey, really. Some people would have considered him if he was a midfielder. But I like the fact that he's a forward. I think it's fair enough, and he comes with a little bit of risk as a mid because he almost picks and chooses his games sometimes. He loves to play well in the big games, and historically he hasn't been an absolute, dominant force throughout the whole home and away season, resulting in too many 110 plus averages. But if this man is eligible as a forward, then we've got to jump on it. So get on him. And Marlon Pickett as well, 123k. Look, a lot of people have him in their sides at the moment. I think there's still a lot of water to go under the bridge in terms for him to even get selected. I know he was the hero in the grand final, but a lot changes over pre-season. I'm sure he'd be very likely to line up in round one. But even if he is, Richmond bat very deep, and I'm sure Pickett wouldn't be the safest of rookies, but at this point in time, on what we know, he played a very good grand final. It's hard to not put him in a seriously consider category, but just monitor it, I reckon. In terms of the risk, and I doubt that many will be going with him, Dion Prestia. Now, I just always enjoy looking at those players where they maybe haven't had an entire season of dominance, but the large part has and the back end has. And for much of the season, he was dominant. We saw him be one of the form players of the competition and saw him get heavily tagged in the grand final. That says a fair bit when you've got Dusty lining up very near you. So I want to look at a few numbers, and Prestia, since coming to the Tigers, has been solid. He lifted his average, I think it was about 88 the year before, to 101 last year, but it's the last sort of second half I want to really look at in a second. But when he was at Gold Coast, the human meatball, he was on the inside, one of the main men for the Suns, averaged 106 in 2014, and I really thought from there on out he was going to be a pretty dominant player and always in consideration for our premium mids. But it wasn't the case. He sort of bought into Richmond's team mentality and just play your role. You're not always going to be the star, but you'll get your turn. And his turn was very, very often in the second half. It was rounds 10 to 23, averaged 110.1. That's outstanding. A moderate start to the season. It wasn't disastrous, but that back end of the season was huge. Then scores in the finals of 109, 164, where he absolutely torched the Cats, and 86 in the grand final, and he was not afforded much space in that game at all. So I don't reckon too many will be looking at him because he's awkwardly priced, and it's probably unlikely. I reckon that sort of 3 to 4 month period will be the best footy he's ever played. To select him on that would be pretty ballsy because in all likelihood he's going to find a level ground, and I'd say he'd average around the 100 to 105 mark again. But I wouldn't endorse him. But he's an interesting case study. And the breakout contender, look, the Tigers have a few young players coming through, but I found it difficult to really highlight one in particular and highlight any with great confidence, to be honest. But look, Shai Bolton certainly showed some real good signs. And as I say so often, the breakout contender can often be a fella who gets a chance in the middle. So often seems to be the case. And Bolton showed that when he had that chance at times, he could be really damaging, some big scores. I think a couple of 120 pluses. The clearances seem to go up in that game. So without seeing the match, it definitely looked like he played a lot more midfield. Jack Ross as well was a guy who looked very good early. Injury got him and probably never quite found the rhythm as he may have liked after that, but he seems like a hard-nosed player. Paddy Nash as well looks real classy. Again, these are some young guys that just need opportunity. They may not get it with the Tigers still well and truly contending and probably relying on their, regular soldiers. And here's a random one for you. Ivan Soldo, 411k, 24 by the start of this season, just about. So I think he's certainly a guy, if Nankervis doesn't play as much footy. We saw scores of 98, 97, 90, 94 from Soldo. It's a pretty random one, and you're never going to go anywhere near him. But look, if you just get deep into your draft and you're thinking, Jesus, I need a ruck, he might not be the worst. And I don't think he's going to be a guy many picks. So a lot of it depends on what's going on with Nank. But and no chance for my side, Basher Hooley. Now, I read probably a little while ago now, but he had a calf strain throughout the pre-season, and as soon as an old fella gets a calf strain, you've got to be concerned. I don't think we're going to be selecting him this season. He was fantastic. The fact that he's getting older and is at top dollar, what is he, 571, I think, 105.3 average last year. So he's outstanding, dominant force, and he'll average really well again, but I think the risk is just much bigger than some other premiums we have in the back line. The fact that Hooley is getting towards the twilight of his career, and then with this little niggle through the pre-season, there's just no real point paying top dollar because you got a range of other options there to select with a fair bit of confidence and less risk, in my opinion. So anyway, that pretty much sums up the Tigers. If you haven't already, subscribe, get along to the Instagram account. I'll have a few things out over the next week in terms of building the shorty community, so stay tuned for that. We're nearly towards the end of these previews. I think, about 4 to go. So thanks for your support, and I'll chat to you soon. Cheers.